Hello strangers, welcome back to part 2 of this SIOAOA video talking about the various type of SIAM models. For those of you that watched part 1, and yeah, I apologise, that was some time ago, you'll remember I described 4 typical types of service integration and management model. Those being a retained team, a service guardian, a single supplier, and having a distinct SIAM provider. For those of you that haven't watched episode 1, well, shame on you, first and foremost. Go and do that now, and then come back and finish this episode, whilst in between making sure you click like and subscribe. So I promised a video that looked at each of these models in more detail, sharing some of the benefits and gotchas for each. Well, today is your lucky day. Given that my videos are less frequent than the passing of Halley's Comet, I thought it best to probably give you a bumper edition today. In this video, we're going to be covering 2 of those models. Well, why 2, I hear you ask? Well, to be straight up and honest with you, the 2 models I'm going to cover today, I'm not a massive fan of. I don't like them. I've worked in organisations where these 2 models have been adopted, and whilst yes, there were some benefits, the downsides, in my opinion, outweighed those benefits. So, which are the 2 unlucky SIAM models that should be consigned to the scrap heap? Well, first off, that of a single supplier. So back in the day, 15 or 20 years ago, it was, let's call it a trend for companies to outsource their IT to a specialist provider. And back then, 10-year outsource deals were not uncommon. Back then it was quite feasible for a single provider to deliver services that met the vast majority, if not all of their customers' IT requirements. The IT landscape back then was nowhere near as diverse as it is today and will be tomorrow, which is no real surprise really, as technology, application of technology and ways of working have developed and evolved since then. Therefore, asking a managed service provider to run all of your IT wasn't a big deal. They had shared capability, experience of doing what you're asking them to do many times for many different organisations. Therefore, perhaps, it was a no-brainer. The thing is, nowadays, the world has moved on. The digital world has developed and evolved to the point where it is most likely impossible that there is one organisation out there that could meet every single digital requirement that a company has. Now, I analogise this like a supermarket. Years ago, the rise of supermarkets came about because you could get everything you need under one roof, much like our single managed service provider. But yet tastes and trends change, and there has been a rise in recent years of independent boutique stores providing niche products, be that artisan bread, craft beer, a certain type and roast of coffee bean. Yes, the supermarkets can diversify and add these sorts of products to their shelves. However, customers are drawn for a range of different reasons to these small, independent brands, who are, at the end of the day, successful. If you want a very specific niche product or service, it's likely you'll turn to someone that specialises in that rather than the jack of all trades, master of none. Back in the day, under these huge service agreements, there would be a level of service management going on by the customer, managing the service being provided to them by the huge outsource provider. But what would then happen if your big service contract didn't meet a very specific need that your business had? You'd either be limited to the capabilities of that organisation, or more likely, you'd have to go elsewhere. And that's really where the problem comes in with this model. If you've outsourced pretty much all of your IT and digital capability to one single service provider, you've probably not got the retained skills, processes, tooling to integrate other services your organisation needs into your operating model. And in fact, thinking about it, I don't even know why having a single monolithic service agreement is even considered a form of SIAM model, service integration and management. Other than integrating the customer company with the service provider company, there's not a whole load of integrating going on compared to those other models. So whilst a company on the face of it might see the benefits of only having one throat to choke, only having one supplier to manage, these are likely to quickly diminish when, frankly, your one provider of choice cannot meet every single one of your requirements now and in the future, which, let's face it, they can't. To be honest, I think this model has generally fell out of favour, or at least is starting to, but in the interest of completeness, let's cover it anyway. Let's be clear, what do I mean by a single SIAM provider? Well, in this scenario, you have an IT ecosystem made up of many different service providers and partners. However, it's not your retained organisation that is doing the managing and integrating when we think about the service management activity. It's typically a third party you've selected that specialises in service integration and management that is doing that on your behalf. Like the previous example, the customer organisation only really has one provider to worry about, the SIAM partner, and it is they that are managing all the other providers on your behalf. The SIAM provider is most likely going to be able to benefit from economies of scale. They're going to have, well, you'd hope, mature tooling, process, people that they use to manage other customer SIAM models, and therefore may be initially more effective at doing so than a retained organisation can achieve, especially if you're starting from a completely a blank page. Now that all sounds wonderful on the face of it, doesn't it? Use a partner that has better capabilities that we have in-house, and you know, isn't that what we do all the time? I can't build and run a network better than BT, so let's use their capabilities and pay for the privilege of doing so. For a commodity services point of view, totally, but I think service integration and management is a vastly different kettle of fish, and here's why. First off, I think using a dedicated service SIAM provider is like having a middleman in everything that you do. Those organisations providing services to your organisation, ideally you want to be in touch with them. You want to build a relationship, no matter where they are on the supplier relationship matrix. If your interaction is always via a SIAM provider or a middleman, well, how strong can that relationship really be? If the SIAM provider is involving the customer in that liaison with the providers and partners, well, isn't that like having a dog and barking yourself? Well, and secondly, flexibility and control. If you're using a dedicated service integrator, they will have a well-defined, perhaps rigid way of doing things. Whilst that can be beneficial for consistency purposes, different suppliers will require different relationships, maybe different ways of working, and there can be challenges trying to add a decent level of pragmatism into the mix via your middleman. The service integrator, to allow them to meet their service levels, may want to keep things as standard as possible, when in reality that approach may cause you and maybe the end supplier challenges. And often the SIAM provider can be seen as getting in the way rather than adding value, which is why they're there in the first place. You might listen to this and conclude that what I'm saying is that giving any level of service integration and management responsibility to an outsourced provider is a bad idea. Let me be clear, that's not what I'm saying. As we'll hear when we cover Service Guardian, there certainly can be a role for a service provider to play to provide a degree of the responsibilities normally provided by that SIAM layer. What I think is now maybe a thing of the past is giving all of that service management and integration responsibilities alone to a single provider. SIAM, in my opinion, is understanding your business drivers and managing multiple service providers in order to deliver value that meets the business requirements. My view is that if you're giving all of this responsibility to someone else, you can't underwrite that the value you and your business seek will be delivered. Ultimately, the what's in it for them question has to be asked. If you're in control of your SIAM function, one would hope that it's because you're aiming to provide value and deliver against business need, of course. Somewhat cynically, I know, a provider, well, any provider, are in the game for profit. They will deliver a service that should deliver value, but will also need to at least break even. Otherwise, what's the point for them? Therefore, the bottom line, rather than your business requirements, may always be the main focus point. Okay, controversial maybe, but do you agree? Do you operate in a SIAM model that adopts one of these approaches, be that a single supplier or a dedicated SIAM provider? If so, am I right? If not, why not? Have I overlooked a massive reason why these models still have a place in today's world? Let me know in the comments. I promise I read every single one. So until next time, probably in about 7 months' time at this rate, I've been Gareth at Switch It Off and On Again. See you soon.